All right, and we are back with another episode on the absolute incompetence and utter utter nightmare that is the office of the Los Angeles City Attorney Hydee Soto. It just seems like no matter what Hydee does, she can't help but make an absolute mockery of herself, the office, and unfortunately, it's all at the expense of the taxpayer. And so we're going to dive into yet another piece here today on exactly how she is yet again betraying the trust, betraying the oath that she swore to take and uphold in her office, and how it is that we definitively know that she is in fact colluding with various criminal agencies to violate the rights of Angelenos, and doing so without any sort of remorse or care, really. And we're going to talk about some of the other pieces I have working that are going to dive deeper into the history and career of Hydee Soto. So you won't want to miss it. And for those that don't care much, the good news is I have yet another article for you. It's posted up here on the screen, and I'm gonna and I put it up on Twitter, and I'm gonna go ahead and share it on a post as well. And so what we're going to talk about today is actually a series of public records that definitively show the office of Hydee Feldstein Soto and Hydee herself letting criminal enterprises like Scientology get away with all of their nonsense, all of their clear violations of the law, and do so without any penalty, which is essentially why they continue to run around committing all sorts of criminal acts. But not just them. You know, the problem is this isn't really isolated just to this one cult. The problem is that even recently in some of the ICE protests, Hydee has miserably failed to step up and do her job as a prosecutor. She has failed to uphold the law universally and go after even corrupt LAPD officers who are in blatant violation of the law and are assaulting members of the press, doing so right on video. And despite having the clear video footage to show for it, Hydee does nothing with it. There was one officer in particular that was caught on tape recently where the guy that has a YouTube channel, A Cat with News, was recently assaulted out by, as he was videotaping and taking photographs of one of the downtown ICE protests. And the guy who committed the assault, you can clearly see from the before the assault, during, and afterwards, there was no level of escalation on the part of the guy who was assaulted as well as anybody else, but he immediately went in, beat the ever-loving crap out of this one guy, and sadly, Hydee does nothing about it, despite her office having the video footage presented to them. And similarly, on that same accord, despite having a restraining order put upon the city so that the LAPD does no violence, they violate the order, a court order. They violate the rights of the press, and they violate the overall safety of Angelenos, and they just don't care. This is who fundamentally Hydee is, right? This is fundamentally who we have as a prosecutor in the city of Los Angeles. We have a person that has zero remorse, zero care, zero interest in the well-being of the community that she was elected and sworn in to protect and serve, as a public servant, not as an elected political puppet of special interest groups, which we will very soon see thanks to some of the campaign finance information that we have available, as well as some of the other public records that I'm about to talk about in this article. But fundamentally, Hydee Soto is somebody that is willing to sell out the office for any special interest, and they will obey. She will obey their orders so long as that campaign money and donations seem to keep rolling in, and she will continue absolutely continue to destroy the trust of Angelenos, no matter how clear and damning the evidence is, whether it be 1, 2, 10, 50 plus LAPD officers repeatedly violating the law on video. She will not prosecute them. She will 100% let Angelenos everywhere suffer at the hands of LAPD, at the hands of any other criminal enterprise, and not give a single damn about it. She will never file charges against LAPD officers who violently go after the press, who clearly and blatantly on video violate a court order. She will not do anything about it, and she will look at you in public, smile your way, and lie straight to your face and say that she is here to uphold and defend the Constitution and defend Angelenos from enemies both foreign and domestic. This is the oath that she repeatedly breaks, and she shows no remorse of it. And we're going to talk about exactly one particular interest where she chooses to violate her oath in the dumbest way possible, frankly, in the most easy to capture way, which is she can't even hold one cult. Okay, she can't even hold one alleged church. One cult really is what they are, as several other nations on planet Earth call them. She can't even hold this cult accountable for violating 5608 to 5611 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code by blockading the public right-of-way with illegal obstacles that have zero permit. This is dating back to the June 2nd as well as June 16th, 2024 series of incidents where this cult in Los Angeles that's been around for far too long had gone and barricaded all of Fountain Avenue and L. Ron Hubbard Way as well as Catalina Street with all sorts of crap on the sidewalks, preventing people from being able to get out of their cars and walk the sidewalks easily. People that lived in the neighborhoods and wanted to walk around with their pets or their kids, and they couldn't do so. And it was videotaped as clear as day. We have video footage from many people who were on scene, dozens of people. I made footage about it. I've written articles about it where they clearly violated the law. Even LAPD in this instance admitted that that Scientology violated the law. And yet Hydee's office and Hydee herself refused to do anything about it. And what we have here on the screen is actually a series of meetings that were supposed to happen specifically to hold a fee hearing to determine the amount of fees that would be paid out by this racket known as Scientology for violating the law, for putting up barricades on the public right-of-way and not obeying the order that the Department of Public Works issued, where the board stated way back in August of 2024. The office stated, the Department of Public Works issued an order stating you have to remove all this crap. It's illegal. You don't have permits. You need to get it out right now. And they didn't. And they stretched it all the way, okay? They bent the law for themselves, and Hydee let them do it all the way until about late April, right? Late April was when they finally got scared enough because we the people, okay, had commissioned a accessibility report that outlining each and every violation of the ADA law on these public streets, on these public sidewalks, and they were terrified that they were going to get a lawsuit. And so Scientology then and only then removed all the crap out of the public sidewalk, but they still were not issued a public fee hearing. They also were not charged. Okay, it's actually 1 count misdemeanor according to the law as it's written, 5608 all the way through 5611 and 12. But particularly 5611, where it states very clearly and plainly, for each violation of blockading the public right-of-way, it's a 1 count misdemeanor, and it comes with a $2,500 fine for each day that you continue to violate the law, and each new violation, meaning if you have something else that's also blocking the public right of way, each violation is also a new charge, a separate charge, as well as an additional $2,500 fine for each and every day that particular unit has also blockaded the public right of way. And if you remember, they had roughly about 252 planters set up all along the public sidewalk. And if you also remember, they had the netting placed up as well. And for each of those, that would be at minimum 253 units that you could charge, 253 misdemeanors, and you multiply that by 2,500, as well as for each of the number of days that those things were up illegally. That is what should be facing this criminal enterprise. That's the reality. That's what the people wanted to see. That's what people are writing in for. And this article actually has each of those emails, thanks to the California Public Records Act, from various people submitting in requests, that we can actually see just what happened behind the scenes to hold this enterprise accountable. And we actually see here is that during two separate fee hearings, they were supposed to have a time to speak directly with a representative of Scientology to let them know exactly what the conditions would be, what the fees would be, and what the charges would be. And on two repeated instances, we can see clearly that Hydee's office did not actually hold the fee hearing, and in fact canceled it both times. They canceled it both times and were not prosecuted as a result. And so it sends a clear message. It sends a very clear message that if you are a criminal enterprise that is a political supporter of Hydee Soto, she will 100% not prosecute you. She will not make you pay any fees. She will not file charges. And her deputies are in order as such as well. And in fact, we know from a memo, thanks to Michelle McGinnis, that, quote, we do not prosecute corporate defendants. That one of the biggest fears that Hydee has is what happened to the Enron Corporation as a result of the massive finance fraud that they committed, that whole racket of Enron. And in fact, that what we have, thanks to some of the discovery in the Michelle McGinnis case, we have Hydee having a career history with the accounting firm used by Enron Corporation to commit their wide-scale fraud at that time. And so this is the legacy that Hydee is leaving behind as a prosecutor, as somebody who had never had any sort of history of being a prosecutor. One day, out of nowhere, somebody that had spent their entire career as a banking lawyer decides to throw their hat in the ring, who is extremely unpopular, and the only thing she has on her campaign trail is that she's running as the first Latina candidate for being a city prosecutor, and ultimately wins. It is a story that makes zero sense on its face, and it's more important now than ever to really understand just how it is that Hydee rose to power, who the political interests were to put her there in the first place, because she's a wildly unpopular candidate. She's a wildly unpopular city attorney. She just is. You can tell from the countless articles written about her, especially even at the LA Times, which I have no reverence for, but it's the one thing they can actually do well, which is highlight how utterly miserable of a prosecutor and terrible Hydee is at her job. She will not prosecute heinous crimes that she's supposed to, has not only an ethical but legal responsibility to do so. I covered that where we have people over at the Northeast Community Police Accountability Board and repeatedly pleading for her office to prosecute various offenders who are exposing themselves on kids' playgrounds and other public areas, and she will deliberately allow those cases to go under the statute of limitations in order to not prosecute them. She's committed to doing that. We know from the Wendell case that she did that as well. Quote saying that the collusion between the two offices, as well, he did it next to a tree, so therefore it doesn't count. We know that the only reason why another predator was even prosecuted is because of the nonstop spam calls and emails and letter writing to her office to make damn sure that he was prosecuted, because he's such a clear and eminent danger. And it took that level of public pressure just to get one simple prosecution that is so clearly and easily baked into reality with damning evidence. And just like those other people over at the CPAB who are pleading for the same type of prosecution to happen, they're never getting their sense of justice because Hydee simply doesn't give a damn. And this is the kind of person that is leading the office of the city attorney right now. And she's running for re-election again. She is just a wildly unpopular character who has been rightfully so also criticized for various other lobbying tactics that she's tried, where she's trying to limit liability payouts. And the only reason that's happening is because she doesn't want victims to get the justice that a jury deems legitimate, not her, right? She wants to be the one to make the determination as to what she perceives and believes people should be getting as a form of justice after being violated brutally by an LAPD officer, or the victim of her negligent advising and complete lack of due diligence to hold accountable the city via fraud programs over at the city council members individually having special business interests in the whole racket that is homelessness alleviation programs and poverty alleviation programs. She will not prosecute those individual council members or any other staffer, despite it being her legal and ethical responsibility to do so. She will not go after LAPD officers for violating the law, even though it is her legal and ethical responsibility to do so. And she will not protect the rights of other peaceful members of the press, activists, and so forth. She won't do it. And this one article here is one of many damning articles that just proves yet again how negligent, reckless, and how little and how zero remorse she has for Angelenos. And I have here a whole list of CPRA records, all showing this very well-known pattern of behavior, from her trying to limit liability payouts and miserably failing over in Sacramento, her working hand in hand with Golden Boy Nathan Hochman to prosecute anybody that is protesting over at ICE rallies, and not holding the LAPD accountable when they attack members of the press, to working with a very well-known criminal racket hiding behind a religious veil and blatantly colluding to prosecute people over frivolous charges. This is the legacy that Hydee is leaving. This is her story, and she's choosing to double down on it. And the best part is that she's up for re-election this year. And one of the next pieces that I'm working on is actually analyzing her 2022 campaign finances. And right now, I verified one person that's donated a significant chunk of change is actually tied to the criminal racket known as Scientology. So of course we have here a motive and an incentive, right? I mean, as if we didn't know. As if we didn't know from the recording I had of the interview I did with her back in March, from her demonstrated behavior of prosecuting people, as if we didn't know. But we have yet another piece of evidence tying and showing them financial motive to behave in such a fashion. Hydee, somebody who went 12 years roughly into retirement and then suddenly out of nowhere popped up to be a prosecutor for the city of Los Angeles and running for the office of the city attorney. Somebody whose history makes zero sense. Somebody whose father was a very well-respected individual for helping close down one of the most disgusting jails that should have never been in existence in the first place, where they were unjustly housing both adults and minors in the same vicinities, and some of the worst human rights abuses ever. And now we have Hydee, who serves as a shining role model for somebody that is happy to enact government corruption, happy to let it all slide by, and happy to aid and abet the city in committing repeated fraud and embezzlement through laundering money that's meant for helping actual people suffering from homelessness, from poverty, and so forth, and instead lining the pockets of developers, lining the pockets of all the middle management of these nonprofits claiming to be of help. That's the legacy that Hydee will be known for. That's the legacy that played out and is very easily seen in the City of LA Alliance v. City of Los Angeles federal civil lawsuit. And in fact, they just released in mid-July and about a week and a half ago the status update that the city is required to now by law to report directly to the court exactly how the city is actually doing with alleviating homelessness and holding up their end of the bargain to commit to the number of beds that they said they would, and the timelines in which that they said they would. And what we see is the city yet again showing that they are nowhere near meeting those obligations that they said themselves it would. They're still thousands of beds short, despite saying that they would have that they were going to meet these requirements years ago. They still are not tracking documentation properly, and we can see now exactly how they're double counting different units, different locations for the same services rendered to the same individuals. This is what Hydee let go under her watch. And the best part is, when I was over at the Sherman Oaks Homeowner Association event, and I heard her very own people, right, her very own political backers, actually hold her accountable and directly confront her at the high level of corruption that her office has been letting slide by. You can see very clearly in that interview that she had zero defense for any of it, that she couldn't sit there and have a legitimate excuse that people would politically buy enough into to explain just how terrible of a job that she's done. How she's repeatedly quashed and ignored CPRA requests. How her deputies, right, are terrified to work with her. How she's running all these political favors on the back end. And how she's nowhere to be seen in the public eye. And how you have to go through this whole, shuffle to figure out where the next public event that she's holding is. And her own deputies lying about where she's even going to be publicly. I actually went to her office that day, and I actually asked two different, let me see if I can actually get their, I know I have it here actually, let me see if I can get their cards. Hold on, I definitely have the cards of the people I spoke to. So Hydee, I know you're listening, but these are the people you have to blame that were terrible liars for you. Hang on one sec, I'm going to find it here. All right, let's see if I have it. If I don't, no big deal, but there it is. I do have it. All right, Hydee. So that day you were going to be at Sherman Oaks. I actually went to your office and I asked them if you were going to have any public appearances, right? Public appearances that we the people could go and ask you questions and just get a chance to interview you. Well, I spoke to Danette Garcia. That's your director. That's your PR director. Okay? Say hi to Danette Garcia. I spoke to Danette Garcia. And I literally even showed her the public flyer. And she said, no, that's not Hydee. And no, she's not having an event there. This is the kind of crap that Hydee tries to pull, and her own people internally, right, are are trying to shield her from in the most dumbest ways possible. I mean, I'll never forget when I was talking to Danette, you know, rather than give me information on what other future events I might be able to see her at, Danette was drilling hard into asking me, who did you find that information from? You know, how did you even find out where our clerk's office here is to ask us about future events? She was so puzzled that I knew so much about how your office is run, and she just couldn't even get herself to have an honest conversation with me to admit how secretive your entire office is, and how you guys won't even announce when you're having public events like this, and how we have to scour the internet for it, right? So Hydee, unfortunately, Danette did a terrible job. Absolutely terrible job. But ultimately, I'm not surprised that one of her own staffers would behave this way. This is what we can expect from a city attorney who doesn't give a crap about the oath they took, doesn't give a crap about her constituents, her community, and will use any sort of dog whistle and virtue signaling. And her favorite by far is, look, I'm the first female Latina to be the city attorney. As if that matters. As if that matters at all into your competency and whether you'll actually uphold your oath. Newsflash, it doesn't. You can't even hold a simple municipal code violation to account. A simple one, not even one charge. You won't even bring it forward. So how the hell are we supposed to have any confidence in you that you'll do any other more serious actions properly? Your own constituents at the Sherman Oaks Homeowner Associations outright confronted you about how your office is terribly run and you're letting corruption run rampantly left, right, and center. And that you had the audacity to even lie to your own political backers, saying that, oh, you're cleaning up your own office. I don't know about everybody else. They can see you, Hydee. They can see that you're not prosecuting these city officials. They can see the blatant fraud happening in front of their eyes, and you're not doing a damn thing about it. Instead, what Hydee's choosing to prosecute is stupid noise complaints. Extremely petty stuff. This is what she leaves behind as a legacy. As somebody that's ultimately soft on crime, right? All these guys, being Nathan Hochman and her, ran on this platform of, look, you know, I'm the tough on crime person that LA needs. It's time that we hold the bad guys accountable, and you're not doing any of it. And I'm not going to let you run your upcoming political campaign trail with that same bullcrap lie, because it's not true, and people are going to see it. They're going to see it, and the number one question they're going to ask is, why are you protecting this very well-known child trafficking cult? The easiest question of all to answer, right? But you obviously can't give a straight answer, because obviously, as some of the campaign donations will show, they're a political backer of yours and a financier. And as somebody who worked in the banking industry for years and then chose to retire, and from the financial statements that we can see as part of your divorce hearings, I mean, when is enough, Hydee? You know, when is that amount of money enough for you? Will it ever be enough? I don't know. You tell me. But again, we have here public records that we can see that you guys are looking at in the screen, that she can't even hold to account a simple municipal code violation for blocking the public right of way with trash that has no permit or right to be there. And it wasn't even your office that went after them. It was the Department of Public Works, and that your office wouldn't even support them until much, much, much later, which you ultimately didn't even do, really. It was all just for show. You canceled all of the fee hearings. You didn't prosecute them. So congratulations, Hydee. This is the legacy that you're leaving behind. People are sick and tired of you, and I'm going to do my all to make sure that the word gets out about you, about how just absolutely terrible you are. overall as a prosecutor, and an absolute stain on the city of Los Angeles. So that's all I got for you guys. All right, see you in the next one. Oh, wait, let's see. Do this real quick. Do we have any comments or not? Not, then we'll wrap it up here. All right, cool. All right, see you guys in the next one.